She always thought she understood what a stable life meant. A house, a job, a family. Everything followed a predictable schedule. Married to Mark for nearly 10 years, she found that most days blurred into a familiar routine: breakfast, chores, work, dinner, conversations that had been repeated countless times. Occasionally, she caught herself feeling a sense of restlessness, as if a part of her was stuck somewhere while she went through the motions day after day. Their young neighbor, Jake, a 22-year-old college student, had always been surprisingly attentive and caring. Even on ordinary days, he found ways to help, handing her a towel when she emerged from the shared cabin's shower, assisting with heavy bags, or quietly sharing a funny story to lift her spirits after a long day. In those moments, she felt a warmth, a long-forgotten lightness. The trip to their cabin began as usual: fresh air, woods, a lake, a few days away from the city. Mark had left for work earlier, leaving her alone. Jake lived just across the yard and often helped her with various tasks. At first, everything went as it always did. She cooked while he assisted. Sometimes they simply sat together, gazing at the calm water outside the cabin windows. But gradually, she began to notice a slight flutter of excitement whenever they were alone together. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the lake, she found herself chopping vegetables in the kitchen. The scent of garlic and herbs filled the air, and she could hear Jake's footsteps approaching. He entered, a casual smile on his face, wearing a faded blue t-shirt and shorts that accentuated his youthful energy. "Need a hand?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe, his arms crossed casually. "Sure, if you don't mind," she replied, grateful for the company. "I'm making pasta." As he joined her, she felt a spark of something she hadn't felt in years. They worked side by side, the rhythm of their movements syncing effortlessly. Their conversation flowed easily, filled with laughter and shared stories. She found herself leaning closer to him, the space between them shrinking as they chopped vegetables and stirred sauces. "Do you ever feel like you're stuck in a rut?" she asked suddenly, surprising herself with the question. "Like life is just predictable?" Jake paused, looking thoughtful. "Yeah, I get that. Sometimes it feels like everyone around me is just going through the motions. But I think it's about finding those little moments that make it worthwhile, you know?" She nodded, her heart racing slightly. "Exactly. It's like, I know I should be happy, but sometimes I just feel empty." "Maybe you need a change of scenery," he suggested, his gaze steady on hers. "Or maybe just a break from the routine." The way he looked at her made her pulse quicken. There was an intensity in his eyes that made her feel seen in a way she hadn't experienced in years. She quickly turned back to the stove, stirring the sauce, trying to steady her breath. "Maybe you're right," she said, her voice a bit shaky. "A change could be good." As they finished preparing dinner, the atmosphere shifted subtly. The playful banter faded, replaced by a charged silence that hung in the air. She could feel the heat radiating from him, and for the first time, she noticed the way his presence filled the room, making it feel smaller yet more intimate. Later, as they sat down to eat, the tension lingered. They exchanged glances over the table, their eyes locking for just a moment longer than usual. She felt a thrill at the thought of what lay beneath the surface of their friendship, a current of unspoken possibilities. After dinner, they moved to the porch, the cool evening air wrapping around them. The stars twinkled overhead, and the sound of crickets filled the silence. Jake leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed on the sky. "Do you ever wonder what it would be like to just break free?" he asked, his voice low and contemplative. "Sometimes," she admitted, her heart racing at the thought. "But it's scary to think about leaving everything behind." "Maybe it's not about leaving, but about finding something new within what you already have," he replied, turning to face her. His eyes sparkled in the moonlight, and she felt a magnetic pull toward him. In that moment, she realized how much she craved connection, how much she longed for something more than the mundane. The air between them crackled with unspoken words, and she could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. As the night deepened, they talked about dreams and aspirations, their hopes intertwining in a way that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. She found herself leaning closer, drawn to him in a way that felt both natural and forbidden. The tension built, and she could sense the shift in their dynamic. It was as if the world around them faded away, leaving just the two of them suspended in time. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, and for a brief moment, she allowed herself to imagine what it would be like to cross that line. But just as the moment reached its peak, she pulled back, the reality of her life crashing down around her. The weight of her marriage, her commitments, and the life she had built pressed heavily on her shoulders. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "Jake, she started, but the words caught in her throat. She didn't know how to voice the turmoil inside her, the conflict between desire and duty. He looked at her, his expression softening. "It's okay. We don't have to rush anything. Sometimes, just being here is enough." She nodded, grateful for his understanding, but the unfulfilled tension lingered in the air, a promise of what could be if only she dared to take that leap. The rain caught them off guard one afternoon on the porch of a quaint cabin nestled in the woods of North Carolina. They were sheltered under a small overhang, trying to stay dry as the downpour danced against the wooden planks. Jake, ever the thoughtful one, had brought a soft blanket and draped it over her shoulders with a gentle touch. In that moment, she felt the warmth of his care envelop her, and her heart raced at the proximity they shared. Laughter bubbled between them, their eyes locking in a way that made the world outside fade into a distant memory. It was just the two of them, the rhythm of the rain, and an unspoken connection that felt electric. As the rain continued to fall, they ventured out for a walk in the nearby forest. The air was fresh and earthy, and the vibrant greens of the leaves glistened with droplets. Jake offered his hand to help her over a small stream, his grip lingering just a moment longer than necessary. Those fleeting seconds left a warm imprint on her skin, a touch that felt different from the usual politeness. There was something tender and exciting about it, a spark that ignited her senses and made her heart flutter. Later that evening, they found themselves in the cozy kitchen, the aroma of sautéed vegetables filling the air. Jake expertly chopped onions and bell peppers, handing them to her with a playful grin. She caught herself stealing glances at him, mesmerized by the way he moved with ease, his laughter ringing like music. Each shared smile and quiet word of encouragement felt like threads weaving an invisible bond between them, pulling them closer in a way that was both exhilarating and terrifying. As they cooked, the kitchen transformed into their own little world, filled with warmth and the soft glow of the overhead lights. The playful banter flowed effortlessly, and she felt a sense of comfort that she hadn't experienced in a long time. They danced around each other, the space between them charged with an unacknowledged tension that made her pulse quicken. Every accidental brush of their arms sent a thrill through her, igniting a longing that was both familiar and foreign. When dinner was finally served, they sat across from each other at the small table, the flickering candlelight casting soft shadows on their faces. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and shared stories. Yet, beneath the surface, there was an undercurrent of something deeper, a yearning that lingered in the air like the scent of the meal they had prepared together. As the evening wore on, they found themselves retreating to the porch once more, the rain having subsided to a gentle drizzle. The world outside was washed clean, and the stars began to peek through the clouds. Jake leaned against the railing, his gaze fixed on the horizon, while she sat beside him, feeling the weight of the moment. The silence between them was comfortable, yet charged with unspoken words. "Isn't it beautiful?" she finally said, breaking the stillness. "Yeah, it really is," he replied, turning to meet her gaze. His eyes sparkled in the dim light, and she felt that magnetic pull again, the urge to bridge the gap between them. The night stretched on, and Sarah found herself unable to sleep. The rhythmic patter of rain against the roof was soothing, yet her mind was restless, swirling with thoughts of an unspoken intimacy that lingered between her and Jake. Each moment they shared felt special, a secret cocoon that wrapped around them, making her breath come in quick bursts. Everything that had transpired was innocent yet profoundly deep, the glances, the laughter, the accidental brushes of their hands, each interaction seemed to awaken something within her that had long been dormant. Mornings began with the usual routine, coffee brewing in the kitchen, the scent of pancakes wafting through the air, and the gentle hum of chores waiting to be tackled. Yet, her feelings for Jake grew more complex, not in a physical sense, but emotionally. His attentiveness, the way he offered to help with the simplest tasks, made those days feel particularly warm and inviting. One sunny afternoon, they decided to venture out to Lake Tahoe, where a small boat sat forgotten in the shed for over a year. The water lapped gently against the sides as they paddled, the reflection of the towering pines shimmering on the surface. As they navigated the serene waters, the boat suddenly snagged on an underwater root. Both reached instinctively to free it, leaning in too close. For a fleeting moment, Jake's hand brushed against hers, a spark ignited, and her heart raced unexpectedly. They both laughed, but the air was thick with a new kind of tension, not alarming, but rich and heavy, like the mist that hung over the lake. "Looks like we're stuck," Jake said, his voice light, but his eyes held a depth that made her pulse quicken. "Just a little bit of teamwork, right?" Sarah replied, trying to keep her tone casual, though her heart betrayed her with its quickened rhythm. As they worked together, their shoulders brushed, and she could feel the warmth radiating from him. It was a simple act, yet it felt monumental, charged with an energy that made her acutely aware of his presence. The laughter faded, replaced by a comfortable silence that enveloped them, the world around them fading into the background. "Do you ever think about what it would be like to just escape?" Jake asked, his gaze drifting toward the horizon where the sun began to dip below the trees. "Escape?" she echoed, her heart fluttering at the thought. "You mean like running away?" "Not exactly running away, but just breaking free from everything for a while. Just us, no responsibilities," he said, a hint of longing in his voice. The idea resonated with her, a tantalizing thought that sent shivers down her spine. "That sounds nice," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But what about everything we have here?" Jake turned to her, his expression serious yet soft. "Sometimes, I think we get so caught up in our lives that we forget to live. It's easy to lose sight of what really matters." His words hung in the air, and she felt the weight of them settle in her chest. The rain had stopped, leaving the world fresh and vibrant, and she could feel the pulse of possibility thrumming between them. Yet, the reality of her life loomed large, a reminder of the commitments she had made, the life she had built. "Jake, she started, but the words faltered on her lips. How could she articulate the turmoil within her? The conflict between her desires and her duties felt insurmountable. "It's okay," he said gently, his voice a soothing balm. "We don't have to rush anything. Sometimes, just being here is enough." She nodded, grateful for his understanding, yet the unfulfilled tension lingered, a promise of what could be if only she dared to take that leap. The sun dipped lower, casting a golden hue over the lake, and for a moment, everything felt possible. As they returned to the cozy cabin, Jake and Emily quietly unpacked their belongings. The air was thick with a comfortable silence, punctuated only by the rustle of clothes and the soft thud of bags hitting the floor. Jake lingered a moment longer than necessary, reaching for a book on the second shelf, holding the door open just a fraction longer, or pulling out a chair for her. Each small touch left a subtle, yet unmistakable mark on Emily's heart. In the evenings, they settled into the living room, the warm glow of the fireplace casting flickering shadows on the walls. Emily would lose herself in a novel, while Jake chimed in with playful commentary, weaving delicate jokes into the narrative. Sometimes, they leaned in closer to the pages, their shoulders brushing against each other, igniting that warm, trusting feeling that made the world outside seem distant and irrelevant. One rainy evening, the sound of raindrops drumming against the roof created a soothing backdrop as they sorted through old photographs, carefully placing them into albums. Each snapshot was a portal to the past, bringing forth laughter and quiet conversations. As they reminisced, their hands brushed against each other while reaching for the same picture, a moment that felt suspended in time. The rain continued to patter softly, the floorboards creaked gently beneath them, and the faint scent of a candle flickered in the air. In that instant, it felt as if the world outside had faded away, leaving just the two of them in a bubble of shared memories and unspoken connections. The moments began to repeat themselves, walks beneath the low-hanging branches, conversations on the porch at sunset, and small household tasks side by side. Alex laughed, helped, and shared stories, each movement radiating warmth and care. Yet, deep down, Emily understood that Ethan could return at any moment, the external order needed to be maintained. Still, those days would linger in her memory, a quiet intimacy, trust, and emotions that were hard to put into words. One tranquil evening, they sat on the porch, watching the lake's ripples catch the last glimmers of light. Alex's hand brushed against hers as he adjusted the blanket. Her heart raced, but she didn't pull away. It felt so close yet safe, trust, care, and emotional warmth enveloped them. The next day, they sorted through boxes of photographs again. Emily noticed something special in Alex's gaze, genuine attention and that warm engagement that couldn't be replaced by mere politeness. She realized that these days had changed her. They hadn't crossed any lines, but they had grown closer than ever, and that brought a sense of peace and lightness. Suddenly, her phone rang. Ethan was coming back earlier than expected. They quickly gathered the albums and tidied up. When he walked in, his eyes reflected a mix of exhaustion and joy. Alex stood up, and they greeted Ethan with smiles. Inside, Emily felt a storm of emotions, joy, relief, a hint of sadness, and an unexpected tenderness toward Alex. But she understood one crucial thing: what had happened hadn't destroyed anything. On the contrary, it had opened new facets of trust and attentiveness within her that she had longed for. That evening, sitting beside Ethan and gazing at the sunset through the windows, she felt a rare calmness. Everything that had transpired would remain between her and Alex, like a quiet, invisible thread. Sometimes, it was these moments of true closeness and attention that made life vibrant and kept the heart open. Life was full of strange, wonderful, and unexpected turns. But true strength lay in balancing what one desires with what is right. And that made each day genuinely valuable. As the last rays of sunlight filtered through the window, Alex's hand brushed against Emily's while he adjusted the blanket draped over them. Her heart raced, but she didn't pull away. It felt so close yet safe, trust, care, and emotional warmth enveloped them in that cozy living room, filled with the scent of fresh coffee and the faint sound of jazz playing in the background. The next day, they resumed their task of sorting through boxes of photographs in the attic of Emily's family home in Asheville, North Carolina. Dust motes danced in the sunlight streaming through the small window, creating a warm, nostalgic atmosphere. Emily noticed something special in Alex's gaze, genuine attention and that warm engagement that couldn't be replaced by mere politeness. It was as if he was seeing her for the first time, not just as a friend but as someone he truly cared about. she realized that these days had changed her. They hadn't crossed any lines, but they had grown closer than ever, and that brought a sense of peace and lightness. Suddenly, her phone rang, breaking the spell of the moment. It was Ethan, her boyfriend, letting her know he was coming back earlier than expected from his trip. Panic surged through her as she exchanged a quick glance with Alex. They quickly gathered the albums and tidied up the attic, shoving the remnants of their intimate moments into the corners of their minds. When Ethan walked in, his eyes reflected a mix of exhaustion and joy, his presence filling the room with a different kind of energy. Alex stood up, and they greeted Ethan with smiles, but Emily felt a storm of emotions brewing inside her: joy, relief, a hint of sadness, and an unexpected tenderness toward Alex that she couldn't shake off. That evening, as they sat together on the porch, the sun dipping below the horizon, Emily felt a rare calmness wash over her. Ethan was animatedly recounting stories from his trip, his laughter ringing out like music, but Emily found her gaze drifting to the deepening twilight sky. It was beautiful, yet her mind wandered to the moments shared with Alex, the quiet conversations, the laughter, the way he listened to her as if she were the only person in the world. Everything that had transpired would remain between her and Alex, like a quiet, invisible thread connecting them in a way she had never anticipated. "Hey, you okay?" Ethan's voice broke through her thoughts, pulling her back to the present. She turned to him, forcing a smile, but inside, she felt the weight of her secret. "Yeah, just thinking," she replied, her voice steady. "About what?" he asked, tilting his head slightly, a hint of concern in his eyes. "Just, life, I guess," she said, her heart racing again as she glanced at Alex, who was leaning against the porch railing, watching the sunset with a contemplative expression. The moment felt charged, and she quickly looked away, focusing back on Ethan. "Life can be pretty unpredictable, huh?" Ethan continued, his tone lightening. "But I'm glad to be back." "I missed you." "I missed you too," she replied, her voice softening. As the evening wore on, they shared stories and laughter, but Emily felt a lingering tension, a silent acknowledgement of the unspoken bond that had formed between her and Alex. It was a delicate balance, one that made her heart race and her mind whirl. Life was full of strange, wonderful, and unexpected turns. But true strength lay in balancing what one desires with what is right. And that made each day genuinely valuable. Later that night, after Ethan had gone to bed, Emily found herself standing on the porch, the cool night air wrapping around her like a comforting blanket. She stared up at the stars, their brilliance a stark contrast to the turmoil inside her. Just then, she heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Alex approaching, his silhouette framed by the soft glow of the porch light. "Can't sleep?" he asked, his voice low and soothing. "Just needed some fresh air," she admitted, her heart fluttering at his proximity. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, stepping closer. "Not at all," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. They stood side by side, gazing up at the vast expanse of the night sky. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with unspoken words and shared moments. Emily could feel the warmth radiating from him, and it made her heart race again. "Do you ever think about what could happen if we just let go?" Alex asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Emily turned to look at him, surprised by the intensity in his gaze. "What do you mean?" "I mean, if we didn't worry about what's right or wrong, or what other people think," he said, his voice steady. "Just followed our instincts." Her breath caught in her throat as she processed his words. The air felt charged, and she could sense the tension building between them. "I don't know, Alex. It's complicated." "Yeah, it is," he replied, taking a step closer, their shoulders almost touching. But sometimes, the most complicated things can lead to the most beautiful experiences. Emily felt her heart race as she searched his eyes, the weight of his words hanging in the air. She wanted to lean into that moment, to explore the possibilities that lay before them, but the reality of her life tugged at her, reminding her of the commitments she had made. "Maybe we should just take it one day at a time," she suggested, her voice trembling slightly. "Yeah, one day at a time," he echoed, but the look in his eyes told her he understood the unspoken tension between them. As they stood there, the world around them faded away, leaving just the two of them suspended in that moment, the stars twinkling above as if they were witnesses to the silent promise that lingered between them. Subscribe to the channel,